Hello and welcome everyone to Mind What Matters, the show where we focus on the interesting data points from the world of cybersecurity so you can mind what matters. My name is Samuel Hill. I lead product marketing here at Mind, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host, the brains of the operation here at Mind, Landon Brown, the field CTO. Landon, how are you today?
I'm good, Sam. Merry Christmas. We're almost there, 3 days away from the big day. I think it's the biggest day of the year for probably both of our households, given that we have so many kids. I'll say there's one solid tradition that I always look forward to in my household, which is steamed pork buns. It's like the staple recipe tradition of our family, and we only really splurge and like fix the recipe on Christmas Eve. So I'm excited. That's what I'm looking forward to the most.
It's a great tradition to look forward to as well. And somebody else who knows an awful lot about having lots of children, Eran Barak, the co-founder and CEO here at Mind. Welcome to the Mind What Matters podcast.
Yeah, great, Samuel, and hi, Landon, and great. Thanks for having me. And by the way, thank you so much for putting this podcast in place. I've heard many good feedbacks around that, and I'm excited to be here today before the end of the year and Christmas. And it's now a stunning day here outside in Seattle after many days of cloud and rain. So I'm excited about that.
Can you imagine right now, though, the work happening in the North Pole? Santa's getting ready. He's loading the sleigh. He's getting all those last little details finalized as he makes his speed run around the world. So we're going to start off as we do most of our episodes today, and we're going to talk about what's on your mind. And so, Landon, I'll start with you. What's on your mind as we go into this joyous festive holiday season?
I think for us, it is our second, but less hectic holiday here in Idaho. We moved from Virginia. I took about a decade break from Idaho, moved to Virginia, did some work down there, and then we ended up moving back just about 2 years ago. So this holiday season is the less hectic one because it's not the same year that we moved right before Christmas, and so we've been able to establish our traditions and have a good time as a family up to this point. And so I think we have a better plan of how we can relax and have fun in Idaho and take advantage of things. I will say the downside is that it's not a white Christmas. We moved to Idaho to enjoy the white Christmas, and it's now our second non-white Christmas in a row, which is kind of ironic. But other than that, I think we're doing really well. It's top of mind for me is expanding on the traditions that we have in our household. So it's been a good year so far.
Yeah, not having a white Christmas, especially when you live in the mountains as you do, Landon, it is a little disappointing. I'm looking outside. We currently have snow on the ground. It is, though, however, projected to melt away before the big day. But Eran, let's go over to you. What is on your mind?
Yeah, so I think like Landon, I mean, we've been in Seattle here almost 8 years now, and we celebrated the first year we came here. We celebrated Christmas here in Seattle, and from then we used to travel every year, and now is I think the second year that we are doing Christmas here in Seattle, and I'm excited about that. At least less travel, being at home and staying put here in Seattle. And as Landon said, I don't see snow here as well in Seattle coming this Christmas, so we'll watch it.
Well, for all of you watching and listening, I hope your Christmas is merry and joyous, and maybe if it's appropriate for your climate and part of the world, that you have a white Christmas as well. That's what's on my mind. I have my family in town staying here at the house, and obviously all of the activities, the scheduling, and kind of fitting in, all the different pieces that everyone's looking forward to for the holiday. And so thinking of traditions, though, guys, I wanted to start and play a little bit of a game with you guys. And I have not talked about these traditions with you, but what I would like to do is I'm going to read you 3 different holiday traditions from around the world, and they might be true. I don't know. You're going to have to decide if it's fact or is it fiction. Some holiday traditions edition here of Fact or Fiction on the Mind What Matters podcast here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read you the tradition. I'll tell you what part of the world it comes from, give you a brief description, and you're going to have to decide, is this fact or fiction? And so here's the first one. This first one comes from Spain, the wonderful nation of Spain. And it's called, I'm going to probably mispronounce it in Spanish, but it's cagatillo. And so here's the tradition. Grinning log is fed sweets tucked under blankets and then ceremonially beaten with sticks while children chant until it literally poops gifts like a festive wooden piñata. Eran, is this holiday tradition fact or fiction?
Let me do ChatGPT before I answer, but no, I'm kidding. But based on what you said, I would say fiction.
Fiction. All right, Landon, fact or fiction?
Listen, us as Americans, we don't have thousands of years of traditions as a culture. And so the traditions we do have, if we do have any that are specific to Americans, aren't really that strange. The Spaniards have been around a long time. And I don't know if you know about some of the interesting sports that they play also, like they play once a decade or once every 5 years. I think it's entirely believable that this is something that they would be up to with their kids.
So you're going to say fact.
I'm gonna
Okay.
say
All right.
fact.
Excellent. Excellent. This tradition is indeed a fact. In
Good job,
Catalonia,
man.
they have a wooden log that they beat until it poops out gifts, which I think my children would love. Maybe that's something we're going to start
I'd
this
be
year.
like, maybe that's what we need to do with our kids.
Yeah.
Unlike me, I usually feel like the wooden log who is beating the sticks
That's
at the end of
me or
Christmas.
my wife, right?
All right, number 2 here. The next one comes from Latvia, one of the Baltic states, and it says it's called the candle counting night. And they say on solstice eve, families place candles along windowsills and tables, never counting them aloud. And at midnight, the youngest child in the family guesses the total. If they get it right, the family will have a year of good health and prosperity. Landon, start with you. Is this fact or fiction?
Listen, I'm a history buff, and in Eastern Europe's been through a lot historically in the past 150, 200 years. And so there was a lot of these traditions that Eastern European families have to keep motivation and positivity in the home. This one seems a little strange given that it's like the youngest child and guessing it. I can see some of the commonalities between some of the positive reinforcement because there was so much famine, or I would say famine, but I would say recession type of economic activity there over the past 150 years. I'm going to say fiction. For me, though, this is going to be false. Not quite believable enough.
All right. And what about from you, Eran?
Yeah, when Landon said the youngest one, which I have a 2 years old, so obviously then he can't count and guess, and I don't want to be wrong again alone, so I would go Landon and do it
You're
as
both
a
calling
fiction.
fiction on
Yeah.
it. And congratulations, that is a fiction made up. I thought I could throw you with Latvia. It's one of my historical family ancestral homes from
Okay.
Latvia. So I thought I could sneak that one in there on you guys, but unfortunately not. That one is fiction. All right, third one for you guys. This one comes from the wonderful nation of Japan. I have family that does live over there, but it's called KFC Christmas, where families reserve buckets of fried chicken weeks ahead, dressing them up as Christmas dinner, complete with cake and champagne, thanks to decades of extremely successful seasonal marketing. Something we don't know anything about here at Mine, successful marketing, but it seems like it's working in Japan. Eran, let's start with you. Fact or fiction?
Wow, this is a tough one. Japanese is obviously a very fascinating culture and a different one. So, although KFC is American, and I don't know the connection between Japan and America in these regards, but I would say fact.
All right, Landon, fact or fiction?
My sister actually studied abroad and then lived abroad in Japan for a number of years. And Iran, I think it is an understatement to say that the Japanese culture is a very unique culture, and it's a beautiful culture. I think that's one of the things that us as Americans we get to admire is the thousands of years of culture that other cultures have built that we don't really have. And so I admire all these kind of unique differences that each culture has. However, I will say that the Japanese have a strange fascination with some things that are American, like very, very strange fascinations. And so this one, and I feel like I've heard something about KFC and fried chicken and the Japanese a while back, so I'm not quite sure. At the same time, I feel like Sam would purposefully give us 2 fictions and 1 fact.
Yeah,
And
makes sense.
I think based on premise, I'm going to say fiction.
All right, so I'm sorry, recounting for me. Eran, you said this was a fact and Landon is calling fiction. Okay,
we can't
Eran,
we need to have a competition here, so it's
yeah,
good.
Eran, congratulations. This is indeed a fact. It is very popular in Japan. And again, weeks and weeks ahead, they have to reserve their fried chicken Christmas dinner. And I agree with you, Landon. There's a lot that we can learn and see as Americans from cultures around the world that have just long histories, many, many traditions. It is a beautiful thing. So we get to pull the best. So this year for Christmas, my family will be eating fried chicken from KFC as well.
Nice.
Just kidding. My wife would not allow that. All right, guys. Thank you for that. That was kind of fun. So the winner of our fact or fiction, actually, I think it's a tie. You both got 2 correct and 1 wrong. So congratulations on tying. Merry Christmas.
This was not planned in advance for our audience.
No, not at all. I kept these very secret. My planning here hopefully was fairly impeccable. Let's dive into this part of the year. Every single year, it seems like somebody has a prediction for what will happen in 2026. And, while there's very low stakes typically making these predictions as far as, whether you're right or wrong, but at the end of this, it's kind of a fun thing. So, guys, we've been working on some of these predictions. I have 3 that I'm going to read for you guys, and we're going to react to these predictions. Tell me what you think of them. And then at the end of that, we are each going to make our own predictions for 2026. And you know what? Maybe we'll revisit this in a year and we could, call fact or fiction on whether what we thought came true or not, and how we evaluate it from there. So let's dive into the first one here. And this one comes to us from Tech Republic, and they're talking about deep fakes forcing a trust revolution. And here's what they say about it. Trust used to be implicit online. Now it must be engineered. Between deep fakes, synthetic identities, and AI-generated content, we've seen a surge in fraud and impersonation that legacy verification methods simply can't mitigate. Regulators are pushing toward mandatory provenance standards, and I expect that to accelerate. Companies will need the ability to prove where data came from, how it was generated, and whether it was altered, especially for high impact decisions and sensitive workflows. The shift isn't just about compliance, it's about maintaining credibility in a world where anything can be faked. Provenance pipelines, watermarking, and cryptographic signatures will become foundational. Landon, what do you make of that prediction for 2026?
I don't even think it's a prediction. I think it's happening. I can tell you from personal experience, it's happening. I've gotten numerous phone calls at 2 a.m. in the morning from Iran begging me for money, and family members as well. And family members have gotten those calls from me. I think I shared a story on a previous podcast with you, Sam. I think we are, I almost would say that this isn't even a prediction. This is happening now. I think the prediction is, how is it going to be solved? And one of the things that I've thought about a lot is, it almost seems like, we invented like key signing and email signing and public private keys and asymmetric secure or A keys and encryption. I feel like this is one of those areas where we're going to see an expansion of that methodology being centralized signatures throughout the enterprise, right? We think of applications communicating in autonomy. We think about users emailing each other. I think about communicating over Slack. I think about making official business calls to my employees or the people that report to me. I feel like there's going to be, it may not end up being exactly this, but some kind of centralization of authenticity, right? Is there a third-party signing mechanism for every email, every text, every Slack message, every phone call, every record that someone uploads that is, attaching a specific unique ID and identity signature to what they're doing and kind of their intent that integrates with everything, in the ecosystem? I don't know, but I do think that it's beyond a prediction and something that's happening now. And I really think the prediction lies in how our organization is going to solve it.
Well, and Eran, as the person who is usually sending me those text messages asking me to get gift cards because you're on an important business meeting, you're the CEO of our company, right? You're the person that a lot of impersonation would try and impersonate, right? So what do you think about all this?
Yeah, no, I say first of all, I agree with Landon. I think it's not a prediction. I think it's already happening. And if we got used to scams where you got some text messages and stuff, now we are going to a different level, right? Sam, you're sending us pictures of the 3 of us or some of the companies, and it looks completely real, right? So to your point, how would I know that this picture was not real and just faked by AI model? And to Landon's point, I think we will need to see some development around how we prove that this data is real and hasn't been altered, as you said. Because it's scary. I can tell you it's scary. You can really do some crazy stuff with this kind of technology these days. And, in my opinion, it will affect more, we are in the business in a B2B area, but it will affect very personal humans, and I think of my kids even, when they grow, right? You can shame and you can do some scary stuff. So we need to be careful of that. And I really hope that will be some regulation around that, because we can't let it go. It's if you combine this with social like Facebook, Meta, WhatsApp, Snapchat, all these guys together, it's really scary combination when you think about it.
Yeah, it's funny. You open up any cybersecurity book, your Security Plus book, a CISP book, a CASM book, a CAM book, like any kind of book that's teaching you about cybersecurity from a 101 level. And they talk about the CIA triad, right? Confidentiality, integrity, availability. And I feel like we've done a really good job as an industry bringing those three concepts to each individual piece of technology, right? Like emails have an element of confidentiality and integrity and availability. So do applications and so does data, but like not across the ecosystem in a collaborative way that enforces like authenticity of identity, behavior, and action.
Right.
So I wonder if there's a world where we see kind of similar to how key management and like, hey, we're going to vault all of our accounts, or we're going to bring Okta in to centralize our identities, but more of a CIA focused, authenticity platform that's integrated into everything for the identity layer and their behavior and what they're doing. And if it doesn't have this key or if it doesn't have this tag associated with it, then hey, we're not even going to let this traverse the network or traverse the API gateway or all of these different things. And so I think, especially when we think about how are we going to monitor agents running in autonomy at light speed, we're not going to be able to do that. There has to be some level of verifying authenticity, and it needs to tie back to how we have software distributed and software driven networks now. We have software driven applications. So I think there's going to be TLDR, a consolidation of how we verify authenticity in the technology ecosystem. And I don't know what that is or what that will be, but I think it's just becoming more and more necessary.
Yeah, we have to have like a PKI of some kind for a Slack message.
Like a
that it
digital
is-
ID almost.
Yeah, something like that, which, obviously that opens Pandora's box in many other different areas. And so lots to be discussed and figured out there by people above my pay grade for sure. All right, here's the second prediction that we'll talk about today. This one comes to us from the wonderful people at Palo Alto Networks, one of the security platforms trusted by millions all around the world. And they talk about data trust in the context of data poisoning. In 2026, here's the prediction. 2026, a new frontier of attacks will be data poisoning, invisibly corrupting the copious amounts of data used to train core AI models running on the complex cloud-native infrastructure that powers the modern AI data center. Adversaries will manipulate training data at its source to create hidden backdoors and untrustworthy black box models. This marks a seismic evolution from data exfiltration. The traditional perimeter is irrelevant when the attack is embedded in the very data used to create the enterprise's core intelligence. And let's start with you, Eran. What do you make of this prediction around data poisoning, model tampering, the adversaries getting down to that level?
Yeah, no, I think again here it's real and it's already happening. I mean, I can tell you that from our customers, and you guys heard it as well. I mean, they are really concerned about prompt injection and how you can manipulate different AI models that their employees use on daily basis, and then this create these backdoors, and obviously it can lead to data exploitation and stealing some sensitive information, and it's not anymore just about stealing identity as we see. It's the landscape of the cybersecurity, and I'll talk later about what I think about AI for 2026. But I think it's a new frontier if it makes sense, and it's kind of breaking all what we have known so far about cybersecurity and technology, and it's a different way that we need to think about how to secure this stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah, I think I agree with Eran. I think it's already happening. I have to draw a distinction in my head though with what is the consumer, what's the business. Like from a B2B perspective, we look at like OpenAI, who's training models, who's spending billions of dollars training models, Microsoft, Google, who are spending billions of dollars in compute and power and humans and like all of the things to train these models. Those people seem to be the target of something like this. I feel there is a line of this doesn't matter for the majority of enterprises, because until technology changes, and I don't expect it will, there's not a lot of enterprises that are training their own models. Right. And so they're usually taking models that are pre-vetted off the shelf, hopefully. And so this kind of, for me, this prediction, while it has some basis in truth, it seems like another very large company that's kind of spreading, not intentionally, but maybe misguided fear mongering to an extent, where it's like scaring organizations away from using models because they're scared of something they can't even control. It would be like not buying a cell phone because you're worried that it would make your ear too warm. Like you can't change that, right? Like you're not developing the cell phone. And so it kind of, for me, and I have kind of probably like a more intimate relationship with this thought of mine, because I saw certain consulting firms in the industry that I'll leave unnamed selling these services when Copilot became kind of a big big introductory topic in the enterprise in early 24, selling services to Red Team Copilot. Right. And so they were trying to do prompt injection against Copilot, but they were selling these services for $100,000 for a 4-week engagement to massive enterprises. At the end of the day, the enterprise doesn't control whether Copilot's secure or not from the model being susceptible to prompt injection. So they were just farming money for something that wasn't actually impacting the organization positively. And I always thought it looked really like far down on that. And so while I don't want to say Palo Alto Networks is reporting anything that is intentionally kind of like causing fear mongering, I do think that this is a problem to be solved by very big tech corporations, and something that, although will impact us all very heavily if it's not accounted for. Does that make sense? My thoughts make sense?
I think so. Let me see if I can clarify it a little bit for us. Obviously, Palo Alto's making a prediction of what they think they're going to see. Surprise, marketing teams help make these predictions, and it points towards maybe something Palo Alto could help companies with, and no worries there. So obviously taking the source into account is a generally good practice. But I guess what you're presuming is that the future is going to be more public models, because those large companies like the OpenAIs, they have the resources to be able to throw at it to train their models, and the compute, the storage, the cooling, just a massive enterprise, right? So you're presuming that will be the more common usage of these large language models and other things, instead of organizations training their own, where they would be more susceptible to the training data having been corrupted in some type of data poisoning.
Yeah, I would say absolutely. I think back in the day, you would be more inclined to try to build a wagon yourself before manufacturing and sawmills and all of the things became a thing, because you needed it to survive. Once people started manufacturing wagons and cars and automobiles and all the things, it became incredibly disadvantageous to even try to make your own. You want to use the one that's been tested and built and has warranties behind it and shared responsibility and all of those kinds of things, right? And I think it's the same way when it comes to machine learning models. Now, I think there's some caveats with RAG-based architectures where people are using an existing model to retrieve some of their own data and augment its response. But at that point, I think that just becomes a foundational cybersecurity concern of, are you protecting your data at the end of the day?
Yeah. Eran, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, no, I think Landon made a good point. I mean, obviously the models and stuff, this wave of AI is behind us. I think these models already been developed. You won't see new players, I would say, or startups coming into this area, because it's a big enterprise game right now, right? It's Microsoft, it's OpenAI, it's Google. So this is already behind us. But to Landon's point and your point, Samuel, you can still manipulate these LLMs and poison them. And this is what we need to make sure we work together with these big enterprises as small companies or mid-sized companies, that we can trust these models when we train them, even on specific data sets that won't be manipulated and work against us in the end of the day. And the bottom line obviously comes to data exploitation and stealing IP and so on and so forth.
Yeah, it's all about the data. Obviously, AI models are fairly useless without data being input into them that they can train off over or work with in order to get their jobs done, if you will. Okay, the last prediction here, and then I'm looking forward to hearing what you guys have to say for 2026. I'll get your reaction to this one. This one comes to us from Security Week magazine, and they talk about security teams will be measured on their business enablement, not their tool count. Now, first of all, I'm not sure that security teams were ever truly measured on how many tools they owned, but maybe it's more like in a checkbox way of like, do you have a tool that covers this aspect of cybersecurity, and a tool that covers this aspect? Maybe that's what they're referring to here. But let me read you what they have to say, and I'll get your reaction first here. 2026, security teams will be under pressure to do more with fewer people and fewer tools. Tool sprawl will be recognized as a liability, not a strength, and success will be measured by how well security enables the business rather than how many alerts it generates. This will drive consolidation around platforms that provide visibility across identity, endpoints, and user behavior, while integrating tightly with data lakes and analytics stacks. Security leaders who can articulate risk in business terms and reduce friction without increasing exposure will emerge as true strategic partners. And I think, Landon, we'll start with you on this one. What do you think of this prediction from our friends at Security Week magazine?
Yeah, I think it's happening now, but I think it's also still a good prediction of the future because I think this idea only becomes more and more true over time. Tool sprawl, I think, is a liability. It'll continue to be recognized as a liability and not a strength. Now, I do think that we are in a rapid age of innovation and innovation of innovation. And I think we'll see that technology does allow us to consolidate capability. I think that some of that is being driven by the fact that when we think about this concept of agentic AI, it's more pushing us towards identity is king and managing identity and authenticity and some of the things that we've talked about is king. And then data is kind of our attack surface, right? So managing our attack surface and ensuring there's authenticity in the identity, touching our attack surface, right? And so I think this is a rather kind of expected prediction, and I expect actually this one or I guess I would say this one's pretty spot on today.
And how about you, Eran?
Yeah, no, I think again to your point, Samuel, about the tools pro. I mean, I know I've been in security for more than 2 decades now, and I think tools pro always been there. I mean, I'm not sure about this point. I mean, obviously, you do measure about how many tools you have and what the impact they make as a CISO or CIO. But I think the more dominant prediction here is about the business outcome, and I agree. At the end of the day, security and CISO and CIO job became to enable and not block the business. So while you want to make sure you are still secure and work in a way that is safe, you do want to measure the security team and the CISO and the CIO on business outcomes. I mean, at the end of the day, if I block a organization to get I would say their goals, right, and just be secured, it's a fine line, right? You need to find the right equation about still being safe, but still making sure you enable the business. And obviously, business outcome is very important to each and every organization in the world. So yeah, this is quite spot on, and we will see it more and more as part of the KPIs, I would say, of CIO, CISO, and security teams in the next few years.
I mean, they've been talking about it forever, right? The security leaders who can articulate risk in business terms that their counterparts around the executive leadership teams and the board members and the folks that are giving oversight to the organization can understand. I really do think that's coming to a head in a lot of ways. So I think this is a fairly safe prediction in some ways. And I don't think any CISO loves tool sprawl if they can get away with accomplishing the task with a more streamlined set of things. We would prefer that, but okay, guys, now it's time for us to draw a line in the sand, and we're gonna make a claim, and we're gonna put our name on the line here for what we think is going to happen next year in 2026. And so this is our opportunity here at Mind What Matters to make our 2026 predictions. And so I'll go first. I think next year we are going to see a record number of AI initiatives across organizations. They're going to start AI initiatives, a record number of them. Thousands and thousands of AI initiatives will start. Most of them will fail. And that's my prediction for 2026. I think we'll see a rough equivalence between initiatives that are started and failures of those initiatives. Simple reason being, we're still at a highly iterative point in AI use cases and AI initiatives across the organization. We keep hearing about all of the wonderful advances and things that can happen for our business. And I think most of those probably will end up being true, but the specific applications, I think we might be a few more rounds of experimentation away from them becoming truly useful and effective. So there's my prediction for 2026. Companies are going to start AI initiatives and most of them will fail. What do you guys think of that?
I think you're right, Sam. And I think, I think back to my time of doing consulting and kind of consulting in the early era of kind of just the AI boom. There's all this talk about transparent AI and responsible AI, ethical AI, explainable AI. And this all came again, kind of a little bit what we were talking about earlier, this concept that we were training the models ourselves, right? And there were valid use cases, and some people were trying that in early days. Certainly, big medical companies were also trying it, like for some use cases that were really cool for diagnosing patients and such. But at the end of the day, all of those companies that put massive amounts of money and time into trying to put programs in place to ensure AI was responsible and ethical and transparent just adopted Microsoft Copilot. And so, like, how much was that investment really worth it, other than educating people on what AI is, which is just valuable to some extent? I think that we have an overinvestment and an third state for some organizations that is, I think, a cost fallacy in some areas when it comes to adopting AI. I think things could be a lot more simple. So I think agree. There's going to be a lot of AI boom, and a lot of things are going to fail, and it's going to come back down to a natural, simple order.
And what do you think, Eran? Am I completely out to lunch here, or is there some path you see to this being a true
No,
prediction?
I think you are spot on, and I think also, I mean, I have my own opinion when it comes to AI agent. I mean, obviously there is a lot of hype around that. I do think, as you said, Sam, the technology is not quite there when it comes to more complex reasoning and action by agents that can mimic human thinking. I mean, I think it's very good when you really narrow down the workflow of these agents, and I think this is where they will be very good at, and especially in 2026, we will see more of them. I mean, I can tell you that, for example, I just read a week ago about Amazon creating almost 2 billion agents from July 2025 till today, which saved a lot of money, to their point, on frauds, terms of products and things like that. But again, you see, this is kind of more narrow, dedicated tasks, repeatable, if it makes sense. So I kind of agree with you, but at the same time, I mean, we will see more of that, and more, as you said, more projects and more initiatives around AI, 100%.
Well, that brings us then to your prediction, Eran. Why don't you tell us what your prediction is for 2026?
Yeah, I think, I mean, my prediction again is just to double down on what you said. I think we will see more AI agents, 100%. I mentioned this number right now, about the 2 billion. But the fascinating thing is that I predict that, and maybe it's already happening, is that you will see more and more these agents running locally, the endpoints on the devices of their employees themselves, not in the cloud. And the reason being is because new tech is coming out, like Claude, Cursor, and many tools where, when the developers and employees can create their own agent running locally. And, this is quite scary when you think about it. If you do zoom out, and these agents, I was looking and asked oftentimes, like, how they are identified from identity perspective. And at the end of the day, they are not. I mean, how do I know if it's Samuel or Landon, or it's their 100 agents doing this work right now? And there are many ways that I won't say here that you can validate that. But I think this is where I see definitely a place for innovation and coming out, if we speak specifically about data and mind, how you can really have a grip, how many agents, what they are doing, which data they are creating, touching, and how you distinguish between human, non-human, and AI agents. I think this is where the market is going to be in 2026, and we as a company also will need to be there with a very innovative solution.
Yeah, Eran, it makes me wonder, outside of security, what is the operationalization of extensible agents going to look like in the future? It makes me think of, I don't know if you remember, Eran, back in the day when we had to do repeated tasks on an endpoint, we have to set up a cron job, right? Or a scheduled task in Windows or something like that. And then if we wanted specific software, we couldn't really get it because things were managed by group policy or by like SCCM. But sometimes I could go to the SCCM store and download the application I wanted, right? That was approved by my organization. It makes you wonder if there's going to be a build a agent or build an agent box on a machine that's kind of like SCCM that says, hey, here's the task I want to do. I'm going to build an agent that's approved by my organization, and it sits on my computer as in a running process, but we're like kind of giving those tools to the user. Because I think one of the things that we learned through consulting on AI adoption is AI is hyper specific to the user that's using it. Right. It's very hard to create generically good agents, right? They like kind of what you said, Eran, is they're very siloed to specific tasks, very
Correct.
specific to what I want it to do. And so do we give users the ability, kind of like a software store, right, in the organization, similar to what SCCM was back in the day, where they can build their agent of what they want to do through approved guidelines and then go off and doing it. And if that's the case, how do we secure that, right? I think to your point, Eran, is I don't think security tools are ready to manage that flux of activity if we let users go and do some of those things as well.
Well, I think you're seeing it from some of the big like SaaS providers too. I mean, Salesforce is offering agents for all sorts of business functions. So in the SaaS realm, you're talking about endpoints, I know specifically, but I think we have
this is
comparable.
Right. And this is a big difference between these agents running in SaaS, where it's more can be, I know maybe it sounds counterintuitive, but can be more managed by these big companies, to where I now give to each and every employee in my company creating their own agents, and I have no clue what they are doing. And this will require much more deep tech, if it makes sense, to secure them. Yeah.
No, it's a fantastic point. All right, Landon, round us off. Your prediction for 2026.
Yeah, I think when we look at the things we talk about, agentic security and agentic AI, I kind of feel like at some level in foundation, you can treat an agent as an application a little bit, right? And I think that even with the rise of traditional applications, containerized applications, cloud-based applications, we saw for about 2 or 3 years, we saw a heavy focus on application and container security. Very, very heavy focus on it. We saw Wiz explode. We saw Sysdig and Aqua, and I think there's ChainGuard and a few others that really exploded. And then they started to die off a little bit, or they started to incorporate a lot more of a data security focused. And my prediction is that everything just keeps coming back to data. I think data security as a market category and as a spend and as a focus for the CISO is going to overtake application security tenfold in 2026. Because AI consumes everything. AI consumes all data. And so at the end of the day, data becomes the entirety of our attack surface and what we're trying to protect. And I think there's 2 key elements in 2026. One we've already seen, and it's already been a stake in the ground, is identity is key, right? But I think data overtakes all other kind of, I would say, importance of security outside of that. So I think we're going to see a large focus in identity, authenticity, and data as an attack surface in 2026.
All right. So to summarize, our predictions for next year in 2026 is that we're going to see a lot of AI initiatives start across many organizations for specific business imperatives or business goals. Most of them will fail, but we're going to keep iterating in that process and keep innovating there. There's going to be a rise of agentic AI specifically on the endpoint, almost like this agentic AI store, if you will, on an endpoint level to really hyper enable productive employees. But this is going to potentially break security as we know it today. So there's going to be an incredible amount of innovation needed to keep up with that. And then finally, data security is going to surpass both application and identity security, if I'm hearing you right, Landon, in importance for foundational overall enterprise security. Hey, those are some fantastic stakes in the ground for 2026. We'll revisit this. We'll look at it next year and see. Maybe we'll all be wrong about absolutely everything, in which case that will be a very fun podcast episode next year. But guys, as we wrap up today, this has been an awesome conversation. I really appreciate it. We're going to talk about, what did you learn today? And so, Eran, we'll start with you. What did you learn today?
So, I'll go to the first section of our podcast is about the fact versus fiction. And I think that this is where I learn about the different cultures, right? Either it's Spain, Japan, and others. So yeah, I take it. And thanks for educating us about fact versus fiction when it comes to these traditions.
And, also learning that you just can't trust every word that comes out of my mouth. It might not be true. Yeah, it's very true. Landon, what did you learn today?
I would say that through the beginning of our conversation that we kind of had in jest around holiday traditions, maybe I learned that Americans do have traditions. They're just not beating logs and having a poop candy. It's more about just simply having fried chicken available at all times. So maybe our traditions are just going to look different from the rest of the world.
Not a problem there. And you know what? I will go beat fried chicken out of a log if that makes everybody happy. It'll be great. I think what I've learned today is obviously the importance of trust, but validate in some ways. So I will be performing retinal scans for my in-laws when they enter my house coming for the holidays to make sure that they are exactly who they say they are, and that all gifts opened by my children will have a seal of authenticity to them to make sure that it is actually the remote control car or whatever my preteen daughter has asked for Christmas. So that's what I've learned today, and we'll take that forward into this wonderful holiday season. Eran, Landon, I hope you have an absolutely joyous and festive holiday season filled with people that you love and care about, and food and all of the celebrations. And so warmest greetings for this season. And for all of you watching and listening, may your holiday season also be blessed, and may you enter 2026 with a sense of purpose, passion, and focus so that you can mind what matters. For Eran Barak, for Landon Brown, my name is Samuel Hill, and that's all for now.